Kraken crypto bank coming soon. Will you get a toaster? Also, everyone in CFI moving to DeFi, and Jerome Powell in the hot seat. This is Around the Blockchain. I threw in that toaster joke for the old heads. I don't even think banks do that anymore, but it's going to be a great episode of Around the Blockchain. Thank you for joining. Make sure you hit that like button. We're going to get right into the guests we have today. Usually, I make sure they always put them in the top left corner. It is TJ Shed. And TJ, do you remember when they gave away toasters? How old was that reference?
Before my time, clearly, because no, I absolutely do not remember that.
That's okay, because I made that comment for Matty B. Matty B, how are you doing? Have you ever gotten a toaster?
No, which is weird because I feel like I might be older than you, but I don't remember the toaster giveaway. But then again, I hate banks and I didn't have an account till I was 20. So,
you're in Canada. They give away waffle makers.
Yes.
All right. And then we also have Cassius Cuvee. How are you doing, Cassius? I see you got the bell in the background. How's it going this Monday?
I'm doing great. What's popping, DZ? Happy to be here, man. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be a great time. And finally, last but not least, we have Crypto Keeper. You also see him at Debate Crypto OG. Great show. Been on there before. Hopefully get on there again. Like I said, we're going to lead with the Kraken Bank. And this has been in the works for several years. They started this, got some of their first regulatory approval back all the way in 2020 when they started the process. And this is according to Kraken's chief legal officer, Marco Santori. And the Kraken Bank is very, very much on track to launch very soon. This guy really likes his varies. Now, TJ Shed, we have been following this whole Silvergate drama, this banking drama, the fiat and off ramps, not for you and me, but for the big exchanges and the larger players in the space. Is this going to have to be the strategy for all these? Is every marketplace, every exchange just going to have to create their own bank moving forward? Or I think Kraken might even work with other exchanges and marketplaces.
Yeah, I think we're going to see this trend continue when it comes to centralized exchanges and being, a banking custody. Like we saw, if you guys were following a lot of the drama that was going on with FTX and one of the investments they made that really didn't make a lot of sense to people, it was a teeny tiny little bank. I think they put like $11 million into it. It had like 4 employees. But it was all for the licensure that they had. It was all for being an approved custodian. This was it definitely the plan and the route FTX was going to take. I don't think this just happened overnight for Kraken. I think this is something that's been in the works for a while. They saw this coming. We know, I think we covered last time I was on this show, where Coinbase was going as being a federally regulated custodian. We know Signature's been getting clamped down. They've got Operation Choke Point going on for all the on and off ramps when it comes to fiat to crypto gateways. So I think Kraken was ahead of the curve on this. This shows their intelligence, that shows their experience dealing with regulators in the space. They knew this was a need they were going to have. They didn't want to have to rely on one of the traditional banks or one of the kind of old players in the system, which I think we will see those rise up as well. And we're going to see people, many other exchanges have to rely on traditional banks that have the licensure and the approval from the federal government that is going to be required in the near future. I do think this is, a trend that we see continue. I'm very happy to see Kraken ahead of the curve because they take it extremely, they take their business and custody of their customers' assets, privacy, identity, all of that stuff very seriously. So this is huge, plus 100 for Jesse Powell and Kraken and everybody over there, in my opinion. Great move on their part.
And plus 1,000 for their Slack channels. Now, Maddie, I'm looking at some of this language from this lawyer. And when I think of lawyers, I think, okay, they're going to be very careful. It's going to sound like boilerplate. This guy seems pretty optimistic. As I said, very much on track to launch very soon. Also, speaking about the crackdown, he said Wall Street's going to be fine. Kraken and Coinbase are going to be okay. He seems so positive. What are the odds that you put on this succeeding? Do you think that the regulators might try to stop this, or are we too close to the finish line already?
Well, I think the only way it really succeeds if it kind of goes way out of the system, maybe even outside America, offshore, because I really don't think you're going to win against these monsters. That you might come out strong, you might get a lot of support, but in the end, when that hammer comes down from Gensler or Powell, whoever's going to do it, it's usually a death blow. And I'm so cynical at this point that it's like one bank goes down, problem, reaction. Oh my God, you can't have any crypto anywhere. Well, we got a solution. Here's Kraken. It's a new bank. It's super safe. Don't worry about the other one. This one's a new one and it's super safe. But at the end of the day, I'm all for DeFi. So I think any movement towards there is good movement.
All right. That's actually an interesting point now, Keeper. We have seen these banks fail. We've seen regulators say, hey, you have a green light. All of a sudden, we skip yellow, go straight to red. Are you concerned about Kraken's bank and the long to midterm health for this? I mean, is there potential that this might operate for a year or two, then just get rug pulled?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show again, DZ. As always, pleasure to be here. It's always, unfortunately, there's a risk in anytime you are investing or putting your money somewhere, there's a risk. The reality is we're seeing it overseas. People are rioting in the streets because these banks are not allowing people access to their funds. Well, why do you think that's happening? Well, part of it is they don't have the funds to give the people. So something has gone drastically wrong before, and it will happen again. Now, whether it happens in this instance or not, I don't know. I would like to think that this wouldn't happen, but crypto has been such a niche bad guy in the financial space in the past few years that I tend to wonder, are they setting up another crypto company to fail? Are they saying, see, they can't do it. We have to go with our traditional finance ways. We have to go with all of the old school players that are at all of the dinner parties I talk about a lot, that have just basically already been ushered into the fold, so to speak. And so I hope that that's not the case. I hope that we are able to take the next step forward. I hope that as we move towards this crypto revolution and continue to press into it, that the crypto companies are able to capitalize on ultimately the traditional ways as well, because unfortunately, I think they're a necessary evil in the space. I'm just really hoping that there's not a bigger play at hand here where the crypto space is being made to look like another failure, another thing gone wrong, and they just set it up to where it's working. Oh shoot, where did all your funds go? I don't know. Nobody's getting their money back. Best of luck. Yeah, crypto's bad, and I'm hoping that is not where we head.
Yeah, and speaking of setting up, they could be setting themselves up to be number one eventually. This, according to their company, is going to be the first digital asset company in U.S. history to receive a bank charter recognized under federal and state laws, and also this first regulated U.S. bank to provide comprehensive deposit taking, custody, and fiduciary services for digital assets. Now, Cassius, it seems like they're really setting themselves up for the future. Are they setting themselves up to be the number one on-ramp for retail? Is there a chance that with Kraken's latest move, they could pass Coinbase maybe by the next top of the bull run?
Well, obviously that's what they hope for, but just imagine, if you will, for a second, a world where people get paid in crypto, where you actually transact everything you do in your daily lives in crypto, where we're living off of DeFi and not CeFi. And for a crypto exchange to now want to start a bank, in some respects, it's kind of taking a step backwards, right? We want to live in a world where one day we don't have to rely upon banks and exchanges for on-ramp and off-ramp for our fiat to turn it into crypto, because we're already transacting and living in a world where one crypto or another can be exchanged and you can keep self-custody of it in your own wallet and then just use DeFi to transact. That is the direction that I think we need to keep our eye on the prize. Whether or not Kraken is a good bank or a bad bank kind of is a misplaced discussion, and as far as I'm concerned, as far as looking at where we want the future to be going. Whether or not, they're set up to fail or whatever, which is, of course, an interesting idea, because we do know that if something like that were to happen, what the narrative would be. But at the end of the day, I always have a healthy mistrust of centralized players. And it's kind of like what Piano Matty B was saying. It's like, if you're a DeFi guy, you look at it, you say, okay, but like ultimately, I know where I want to be going forward in the future.
All right. Well, let's move forward and get to the next topic here. We're talking about centralized finance versus decentralized finance. I like to park my dollars, but it's no surprise, 22, we saw a huge drawdown as people moved from centralized exchanges to decentralized exchanges. Not only is it FTX collapse, 3AC, of course, Gemini earn programs, just across the board, we're seeing collapses left and right. Meanwhile, you see Uniswap, recently moving on the uptick. We also had a couple other DeFi projects, Lido, Uniswap as well. I was looking at what was the number one DeFi protocol for last year, it's a little bit sobering. And also the number one CeFi project last year, according to funds being raised. Number one centralized was FTX. In January of that year, they raised $800 million, making them the number one centralized finance protocol when it comes to money raised. DeFi, honestly, guys, it's not that much better. TJ, I'm going to go to you. The number one, it was Luna Foundation Guard. They raised $1 billion. I'm looking at the data. It doesn't appear we are ready for DeFi. It's like we still need something. We need someone holding our hand. I'm about to run across that street. I don't know if I'm looking left or right. Are we ready to move to DeFi being the number one protocol over centralized finance? Or do we still need a couple maybe hurdles, speed bumps, get our bearings before we foray into that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I would say some people are ready, some people aren't. Maybe it's not necessarily a one size fits all answer. And I would kind of disagree with some of the people that are kind of against a lot of the CeFi stuff because, I mean, yes, we all want to move towards decentralized finance. We all want to move towards DeFi, but we can't get there without bridging, all the money that in the world that exists right now does exist in the traditional system. So if you want to buy, sell, transact in DeFi, guess what? You're going to have to get out of the system we're in right now into the new system. And there's no way really to do that yet without exchanges, without, on and off ramps, which is what we're talking about. Even DeFi, you have to use some kind of bank to get out of dollars into this DeFi thing, whether it's Curve or Aave or, a lot of these things, Plaid and Wire, all of these things are banks that are getting you, they are the bridge into that DeFi ecosystem. So this is a necessary evil, even if you consider it an evil. You can't do it without one of these partners or parties, taking that role on. So that's what I think about when I'm looking at what Kraken's doing. I'm very glad to see they're doing it. I don't think they're going to fail because they have been an operating exchange for such a long time, and they do back things one-to-one. What's the biggest problem with traditional finance is they do fractional reserve banking. Most banks out there do not keep a one-to-one reserve on all their assets. They don't even really keep 10% reserves anymore. They don't have to. So I see this as, yes, we do still need this as a necessary evil. It will take a long time for us. Like, we love DeFi. I love that world. We are heading there. I support it 110%. I'm big on pushing decentralized exchanges, multi-chain DeFi, all that sort of stuff. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Putting power back into people's hands is great, but it's going to take way longer than a lot of people think it is. I hope it happens in my lifetime. I'm not sure that it will. I think it's going to take 10, 20, 30, 40 years before we have a fully decentralized world, if ever. And there will have to be some intermediaries moving, bridging. Say there's trillions of dollars that exist in the world right now, and barely, or quadrillion, really, if you count derivatives and all that sort of stuff. We barely have $1 trillion in crypto right now. So if you want to see that go from 1 trillion to 10 trillion, you're going to need these bridges in place to make that happen. So yes, some people, I would say everybody on this show, probably ready to self-custody their own funds, probably ready to interact with DeFi protocols, make decentralized swaps, bridge from chain to chain, do everything you have to do to interact in DeFi right now. The average person that doesn't even trade, have a stock account, that doesn't really understand financial systems at all, maybe not that tech savvy, they think being tech savvy is, having a Robinhood or an E-Trade account. That person probably not ready to interact in DeFi as it stands today. It's way better today than it was in 2017 and 2018, but it's still got a really long way to go, in my opinion. So I'm all for that decentralized future. I fight for decentralization and self-custody every step of the way. If you guys watch Blockchain Basement, that's most of what we're talking about, is kind of up and coming self-custody decentralized exchanges. Because I do think it will be a niche that grows a lot, due to a lot of the centralized collapses we've seen in the past. But it's got a long way to go, and there is no world of DeFi without Coinbase, without Kraken. These are the guys that were there in 2011. It wouldn't have happened without Mt. Gox and BitInstant that were there at the very beginning. You can't get into this new digital world without some type of bridge. And like I said, it's way better now than the BitInstant and the Mt. Gox days. There is still an element of trust with any centralized exchange. That's why I look at Kraken as one of the ones that's been doing it the longest. They fight for their customer funds the most, and their customer privacy and their rights, and the KYC law. Like, they will push back on the government as much as they possibly can and still operate at the same time. Shapeshift is another one that I like. Eric Voorhees, he's had a lot of experience with this. So it's not a it's an idealistic battle, and you need to have true ideals, but you have to live in a realistic world. And I think that's what Eric Voorhees and Jesse Powell, in my opinion, are some of the two of the best at. They fight for strong ideals, but they still have the realism to know, we have to operate within the world that we live in. We can't operate in a fantasy land, or we'll never get there.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of putting it there, fantasy land. I think you surmised it quite well when you said the average person on Robinhood buying GameStop stock, they probably consider themselves, somewhat of a sophisticated investor, and we definitely need to raise that bar slightly above that. All right,
Yeah.
Matty B.
No shade, no shade.
Yeah, nothing against that. Nothing against that. Now, Matty B, do you think that will continue this momentum of, gradually moving into DeFi? Or do you think that these CeFi worries are going to dissipate and, just in time for the next bull run, everyone's going to say, oh, $10 free Bitcoin. I'll sign an account.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think one of the biggest problems for anyone that I've known that have like dipped their toes into crypto, it's really that wallet and how do you move that money around. Like I wish, like when I first started trading currency, I kind of learned on what's called a dummy account, where you just, I'm sure they have it in the crypto, but you fake trade, right? They should almost have like a dummy account to practice putting money from one wallet or from exchange to the wallet, so you don't have to have like a mental breakdown every time you're sitting there waiting for that transaction to go through. It's really like life is on hold, and it shouldn't be that nerve-wracking. And when that process is smoother, I think we'll see probably a mass exodus into DeFi once it's like, it's a sure shot, right? Even I've done it so many times, and every time I do it, I'm still like, let's hope for the best.
Yeah. Now, I think at home, hit that like button if your first large transaction, whatever that might be, it's going to mean different things to different people. Made your armpit sweat a little bit. If you clenched, that button, I don't know. You're double checking 0x for A, C, So if that's ever been you, please hit that like button. All right, Cassius, I'm going to ask you and Crypto Keeper kind of the same question, but just polar opposites here. Could you describe for the viewer at home, we're talking about centralized, we're talking about decentralized. To a lot of people, it kind of seems the same. What is the best aspects of centralized finance that, we should continue to say, hey, this isn't a bad thing?
Right. Well, the best aspects of centralized finance is, they've got some history on their side, obviously, right? So for some of the regulations and the things that are in place, they're there for a reason, so that people can't or not supposed to manipulate. At least you'd be breaking the law if you did. And obviously they operate in our normal traditional finances. We call it TradFi, which is traditional finance. So it's not that much different than what you're used to just in normal life. There's a centralized entity that you go through to transact. Usually it's a bank. Whereas DeFi is decentralized finance, meaning that what we're trusting is the code, the blockchain. It is the verification process. It's not a human being who can be corrupted, who can be squeezed, who can be manipulated. So when we say self-custody of our own crypto in our own wallet, and let's say I want to send some to you, DZ, we know that it went through because it's on the blockchain, because the code tells us so. And I like that because that means like no one can really cheat it. If the code can't be broken, then you know that there's nobody's been manipulated. And nobody's taking a cut of it, by the way. Every time I send you some money, they're not getting a transaction fee of, unfair amount. So that's kind of like the differences between the two. I do want to point out one thing, though. As everything in Web3 gets developed, Web3 is read, write, and own. So what we call, we have ownership of the internet, basically the third iteration of the internet. There's going to be developments as well for, let's say, corporations or anybody else who wants to participate in crypto on a massive scale, on an institutional size scale. So that, like when I was kind of, like I said, imagine a world in the future where I'm getting paid in crypto. I have a song called Pay Me an Algo coming out, where it's like, they're going to have a way where you don't have to be a regular layman person to know how to self-custody, know how to transact, to have to run that dummy account. Because I know exactly what Piano Matty B is talking about. Every time I send something, right, you're hoping it goes through. There's going to be ways and levels of custody that makes it more seamless for folks who aren't, crypto native, who are going to not really have to think about it. And a lot of things are in development. We always say we're always early, and we still are early, but a lot of that development will come hand in hand as DeFi gets developed, as CeFi or people like Kraken have a Kraken bank. Maybe they'll be some of the forefront of making it easier for folks who aren't doing crypto the way we're doing it today to kind of be onboarded and make it more seamless for them in the future. So stay tuned. More stuff is going to come.
All right, looking forward to that song too. Make sure you follow him, and you can stay up to date on all the hot drops. All right, now Crypto Keeper, what do you think are the best aspects of decentralized finance that centralized finance can't replicate?
Yeah, so there's a number for sure. One right off the bat is the fees. You know, these centralized entities have all of this overhead with, depending on, you know, if you're just looking at like a traditional bank,
Like
like
the
they
good
have
old,
all.
always bring up the good old Coinbase tax. You see the crypto, it's, say Bitcoin's
Yep,
20,400. You click buy
yep, yep.
20,600. How'd that happen? And then you never see
How
the
did that
price hit it.
happen? Yep, that's right. And overhead is sucking a lot of that up, and then they'll give you a whole lot of other explanations. But there's a whole bunch of other ones too. You know, there is, so the lack of intermediaries, like people that are in between. It's basically like there's like a supply chain in centralized finance where it has to go through this, and this, right? So with DeFi, you don't have borders, so to speak. You're going to have speed, like faster speed. A lot of times with centralized finance, it takes freaking forever. With DeFi, I mean, depending on what network you're on, it can be lightning fast, no pun intended there. So improved transparency. These centralized banks don't want you to have the information on the back end. With DeFi, it's more transparent. You can actually look through on the blockchain, see what's happening. That's good. Once we move into the programmable side of things, you have the ability to get it. Now you got to be a technical, guy for that, but programmability, interoperability. A lot of these banks don't want to work together on the centralized finance type. Now on DeFi, depending on what networks you're on and some other, technical aspects, you can basically, I could send money to anybody I want to right now here on the stream while it's happening. So smash that like if you want Keeper to send you some crypto today. Probably not going to happen, but it could. Immutability. I mean, they're more control. What it really comes down to for me is that you have the control over your own funds. You don't have to give that up. You don't have to allow some, suit to take a scalp off of your hard-earned money, your hard-earned funds, your hard-earned crypto. So I like it for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah, and I think we're really going to onboard a lot of people with the first thing that you said there, which is fees. You save money, you get to see it.
For sure.
Once they discover Tron and how cheap the transactions are. All right, well let's we love Tron, we love TRX. All right, let's talk about Jerome Powell on the hot seat. He is speaking in front of Congress now. Remember, he only does this twice a year, every 6 months. They have their semi-annual congressional hearings, and now is going to be 2 days of hearings. It's starting tomorrow. There you've seen on the porcelain throne having a hard time, it appeared. And 6 months ago, you might recall, they were facing 40-year high inflation. But since then, seemingly doing an okay job. I think they're actually at 7 months straight of year-over-year inflation actually going down. So my question to you, TJ, 6 months ago, couldn't appear like he was doing a worse job. Now he's got 7 months of it going in the right direction. In your opinion, is Jerome doing a good job?
You
Don't
set
do
me
it,
up. That's a
TJ.
tough question. That's a tough question. I want to say first, though, I did smash the like button like 4 times, so I'm waiting for that transaction to come through, Keeper. I'll take Ethereum, please. Setting me up with the Jerome Powell question. Golly, is he doing a good job? I guess it's all relative to his counterparts in the past. I mean, he also created that scenario too. He's been in the seat quite a long time. So it's one of those, like, if you create the scenario and then come back and fix it, is that considered a good job? I don't really know. Is he really fixing it?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I just thought of an analogy. It's like you missed a layup, but you got your own rebound.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, good. And then you dunked it, right? Is that good? You scored 2 points, but you missed your basic shot. So he turned that money printer on and created some of this insane inflation. I think a lot of what he's doing now is CYA in a lot of different ways. It's all, playing with the numbers. It's not, I don't put a lot of stock in the numbers that they give you on inflation. If you talk about the real inflation, you just go, check the price of food, like the real price of food, not the numbers they put out year over year, month over month, but like go back 10 years and look at what a Coke costs and look at what it costs now. I mean, I've experienced insane inflation in my lifetime, much more than the previous generations experienced in their lifetime. And that a lot of that comes back to what happened in 1970. A lot of this is why all of us are in this space. It comes back to an unsound money supply. So anytime there's an unsound money supply, the temptation is way too strong to print. We've seen it for millennia, over thousands of years of financial and economic policy anytime they weren't tethered to a solid hard gold money standard or sound money standard. Always eventually, you get into a situation like this, and we're experiencing that right now. I don't see it getting much better. I think there's a lot they can do. You can call it financial gymnastics if you want, that make things sound better, make things look better, make people feel better. But as long as we're not tied to a gold standard or anything that keeps us from printing money, it is really an economic war, in my opinion. And the United States, we might be winning that war, but the losers is kind of all the population of the world, whether it's people in the United States or other people in second, third world countries whose wealth just gets literally ripped out of their hands through inflation and floats up to the first world countries, the bigger central banks, whether it's us, EU, China, Japan. Those are the 4 biggest central banks in the world. So this is economic warfare, in my opinion. We might be winning here in the United States, but at the expense of humanity, which is really what makes me sad to watch. It's painful to watch. I didn't really want to learn this stuff that I learned, but once you're awake to it, it's really hard not to it's really hard to unsee it after you've seen it. So it's he's doing exactly what he's been tasked to do. I'll say that, but I don't like it.
All right, could we cut to that picture one more time? Here's what he thinks of TJ's comments.
Okay.
I don't know if we have it ready, actually. That's what he
thinks.
thinks. That's what he thinks. All right, well, Matty B, he brought up some pretty sound reasons for, why potentially we see inflation. He brought up a printer. Well, I was told, this is from the Fed here. We have many global factors, Matty B. Look, supply shortages. There's this impending war overseas. Of course, there's the corporate giants with their record profits and all their greed. But Matty, I'm just a dumb Bitcoiner, and I thought it was money printer go burr. Which is it? I mean, is it, what is more important when it comes to inflation, or what's more of a driver? Is it money printer, or is it what they said?
Well, on a side note, I was in Austin last week, and the last time I was there was 4 years ago. And I can't believe how expensive everything is there compared to 4 years ago. Not only that, compared to Canada, and I think Canada is super expensive with the inflation, but it's nothing compared to how expensive everything was in Austin. I couldn't believe it. But I mean, these psychos, what are you going to do? You can't believe them, right? So we basically think they're lying about 95% of what they're doing, and then they come up with these CPI numbers, this basket of lies where they just fudge it around. It's like, well, we need a lower inflation, so let's take out eggs, put in some Rubik's cubes, and then we'll have a little bit of a lower inflation, and the stock market will rally, and then we'll hit them the next month and go, oh my God, inflation's up again. I can't believe it. So when do we start believing them, or do we ever? And I guess my question to you, DZ, is, will you ever believe what the government's telling you?
No, not as long as they don't use the Rubik's Cube metric. I've long been a staunch proponent of that. If they don't use that, I can't believe anything they're saying.
It's a gold money standard, the Rubik's Cube, yes.
It's all the way back to the Egyptians, I believe. All right, now, Crypto Keeper, they want to have a soft landing. They keep saying soft landing, although it doesn't look like he's having a soft time there, according to that picture. He's having more of a hard time, but is it possible to have a soft landing? Again, I'll repeat. 7 months of year-over-year inflation, in the right direction.
Yeah, no, it's not. There's not going to be a soft landing here. I like the financial gymnastics comment, I think, by TJ, because that is exactly what's happening. Basically, let's see how much we can play around out on the mats with these numbers to make people, to wear them down and or make them feel good. So let's look at it. So the inflation rose to almost 9%, which was, again, those numbers are fudged. They do leave out, depending on if you're looking at CPI, they leave out energy, they leave out food. Well, look at eggs right now. Of course, that's why they're leaving it out, because, it would be, the numbers would be 20+%. That's just a fact, right? So what they're doing is, for those of you that don't know, they're trying to combat inflation by raising interest rates, okay? Here's the thing that's going on in the background, though, that's really unfortunate. You have Democrats and Republicans that both have opposing views on what this looks like, okay? So Jerome Powell is basically trying to placate the Democrats who fear that the hikes, that the Fed hikes, these interest rate hikes will cause a recession, which, newsflash, Democrats, we're already in one, while at the same time trying to reassure Republicans that the Fed will send rates high enough to quash inflation. So they're both doing this. Well, what was missing out of what I just spoke about? Oh, you mean the people that live in this country, the people that have to buy those damn eggs, the people that have to pay for the gas, the people that ultimately are working our tails off endlessly for a fake money that they can just flip a printer on, say that it's there. The banks don't have to hold any sort of a percentage. It is fictional reserve banking. It's not even fractional. So what happens? They're basically just trying to placate everyone who is the benefactor of all of this inflation. The inflation is not to benefit the people. When they sent out checks that was scratching everybody's back, that's all they were doing. Because what were the checks for? Oh, they were to stimulate the economy. But what was happening then? Oh, really? Amazon had bigger record profits greater than any time other before? Oh my gosh, I wonder who they donated to. You know, I could go on for days about this. It is very frustrating. There's going to be no soft landing. The reality is we turned the printer on, like we were talking about earlier, one too many times. And this is not just a new thing. This has always been the case. Turn it on, raise interest rates, turn it on, raise interest rates. It at some point is going to fall and fail. And I think we are there right now. How long it's going to take to officially fail, I don't know. But they are setting each and every one of us up for failure. If that pushes us into a CBDC, that's one thing. If it pushes us just flat out into a daggone depression, that would be another thing. I don't know. I think we're in for a rude awakening. I think they're trying to rub our shoulders as long as we can, make us feel as good as possible for as long as possible. But the reality is we are in a recession right now. Things are not good right now. They're more expensive than they've ever been. We're not living in an economy that is bustling. That's for sure. I own some companies, some businesses, and can't even get people to work. Where did all that come from? Right? It's wild, and I'm really praying for our country because we've got.
I actually know the number one way to make yourself feel good at home, and that is click that like button. Make sure you go ahead and do it. And also, if you're not following any of these guests, what are you doing? Make sure you go ahead. Make sure you're subbed. In fact, be a super follower if you can.
Yeah.
All right, final.
I was going to say that was fire. Both I love what Matty B said, a basket of lies and fictional reserve banking. That is a great line. I'm definitely going to use that again in the future. That's awesome.
All right. I'm getting it tatted on my back. I'm taking another level up. All right. Now, Cassius, you know, we're looking here. I do like the basket of lies. You know, I wouldn't mind getting. I'm asking you this question because, you know, like Paul Wall, you have a grill. Do you think Jerome Powell, when he steps in front of Congress tomorrow, he's got to do it Tuesday, he's got to do it Wednesday, are they actually going to grill this man? Or is it, we saw with Elizabeth Warren, they're giving these people the questions ahead of time. What do you think this is going to be like? Is this political theater and everyone's reading lines? Or are they really going to, you know, put them to the fire here?
Well, first of all, yes, it is political theater. It's always political theater. Don't get that twisted. No doubt about that. And yes, he probably knows the questions in advance. That being said, still part of the parameters of political theater is perhaps a senator or a congressperson doing a little bit of grandstanding. So, you know, somebody's going to be on their high horse grilling him, whether or not it's, you know, with the intentions of really grilling him or just, you know, for their own grandiose ideals or whatever. I'm not sure. But for sure, he's going to talk about inflation target being 2%. So somebody's going to be like, we're still a long ways away from 2%. He'll say we're a long ways away from 2%, which is ultimately why I think that, you know, we know they're going to see more interest rate hikes. I don't think there'll be that many more, but I'm looking at a 6% target overall. So I think he's going to be pretty hawkish tomorrow. I think you better hold on to your high risk assets, which includes crypto naturally. I obviously believe in crypto long term, but in the short term, I'll be very careful because his words are probably going to tank the markets as they often do.
All right. Yeah, we need someone to step up. We need a Rand Paul to give him the Fauci treatment or something. I agree. There might be one or two, though, they'll step forward for their own, you know, agenda, maybe give a finger to the bankers and say, you know what, I'm on the bubble here with my constituency. I got to step it up. So hopefully some of these congressional members really do their job, as crazy as that sounds. But that is all we have time for today. It looks like we're going to wrap it up with TJ in the victory seat. You got that green flag, and then you just kept going, and you took home the checkered. So, TJ, feel free. Leave us with some parting thoughts.
Yeah, the chat was saying my points were rigged, and maybe those were inflated. But I swear they're all. It's all real. No, just big shout out to everybody on the show. But, make sure to go check out all of their channels. Like I said, I loved everything they were saying there. Really great information and statements that they made. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to Blockchain Basement, we go live every single day at 1:15. We broke 7,000 subs today. You got to get in before 10,000 subscribers because we're going to have a little special thing in the future for all the subscribers under 10,000 because we know when that bull run comes back and all the attention comes back, it's going to be a lot more people getting in the boat. So we have a lot of fun down there. It's a little bit more loose-lipped, I guess you could say. We're a little bit more casual with everything. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for having me on, DZ. Shout out to all the other guests. Love you all.
And this is going to be the most liked video in history of all of YouTube. So be one of the first million people. Go ahead, hit that like button. We're shooting for 100 million total. I think we can hit it. Until next time, Bit Squad. DZ out.